All right, welcome everyone to the first episode of the Drew Moore Show. I'm Drew Moore, and we're basically just going to be talking about here on this podcast, just talk about politics, news from a conservative, libertarian, hybrid lens through things here. That's how I'll be framing things, looking through this. We'll talk about politics, news, sports, entertainment, other stuff. Just hang out, talk. Hopefully, create a community here, commenting, stuff like that. Go ahead, run through the docket that we have today, and hopefully have a good time. All right, so the first thing that I want to talk about here today during the show is basically the media's collusion, delusion. We saw this, the Muller report released, basically the doubling down by the mainstream media, CNN, MSNBC, all the major, basically talking heads that have been perpetuating the myth of the Russia collusion from the Trump administration. They basically jumped right into continuing to dig their grave. They did this with no problem. Basically doubling down, saying that basically AG Barr entering into a major cover-up scheme, which really, they did this right away. They didn't even look back, apologize, or even admit some mistakes that they made, which clearly there has to be mistakes or else this whole report wouldn't have happened. I mean, they seem to be completely missing that Muller said himself that there was not enough evidence for Russia collusion to prosecute there. So none of this makes sense. And then, of course, a few days ago here, we had the report from the Washington Post. Some investigators say the report is worse for Trump than Barr says. So let's just go ahead and talk about this, logistically. This really doesn't add up when you think about it in terms of, what we knew before. Because we remember back whenever BuzzFeed released the article basically stating how there was major things that were discussed in the Mueller thing. People from from the special counsel came out immediately, basically to denounce these things, say that they were completely false. So why would they wait almost 2 weeks now after the submitment of the report to Department of Justice and Attorney General Barr? They're going to wait 2 weeks before coming out to say anything, and really inconclusive with what they actually say here when we go ahead and read through his. They're just saying that they just feel that this wasn't as damaging as they thought it was. Really, I don't really see how this means a cover-up. You really don't think that Mueller wouldn't come out and have said anything in 2 weeks. And this really makes sense. Why would Barr be engaging here into some sort of a cover-up whenever he's going to have to release this stuff anyway? He's already stated that this will be released sometime in mid-April. So we're literally just days away now, a week, 2 weeks, absolutely 2 weeks at the max from when we're going to get a majority of the report released. The only stuff that's not going to be released is part that cannot be released legally. So that's what the wait is. They're going through and searching through, removing the parts that cannot legally be released to the public. They're going through that, and we're going to get it. So I don't understand why the media has to jump on this right away, push all these claims, but that's just what they did the whole time with the collusion myth. They continued to lie, continued to push bombshell allegations all the time, which was just with no evidence whatsoever. They continue to push this type of stuff. So now they do the same thing with all this. They're jumping on it. So instead of just asking, a really good question that I think a lot of people could agree with is exactly why did Barr not rule on or why did he say we're not going to prosecute on obstruction of justice? That is actually, I think, a relatively good question. But all we have to do is just wait a few weeks and we'll get the report and we can figure out what evidence is there and see pretty clearly why there was not enough to prosecute. Most likely, what there is, you don't have to go ahead and jump to this is a massive cover-up scheme, which just really doesn't make sense at all. And there's no collusion, but they keep pushing this stuff. And we'll go ahead and just play a clip during the collusion myth. Then we'll get into some of these, some of the cover-up myths that they're starting to push, which happened instantly right after. So we'll go ahead and get into a clip here from YouTube channel, the DC Shorts. Go ahead, check that channel out. Got a couple clips I'm going to show today during the show, but go ahead. We're going to play this clip just basically about the media throughout the entire time that they were talking about this collusion myth and all the times it said, bombshell allegations, all this stuff. This is it. Walls closing in, all that type of stuff. Go ahead and play this clip for you guys. It's a pretty good one.
The evidence is pretty clear that there was collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians.
There's clear evidence of an intent to collude.
I think that's clear collusion.
Never heard anyone on CNN say that there was evidence of collusion.
I think a mountain of evidence of collusion between the campaign and the Russians. This administration is compromised.
That's one way to put it.
I think they're getting closer to knowing that the truth's going to come out, that there was
activities with the Trump campaign in Russia and releasing those hacks and guiding them to the states. And
all you have right now is a circumstantial case.
Actually, no, Chuck. I can tell you that the case is more than that, and I can't go into the particulars, but there is more than circumstantial evidence now.
A conspiracy or collusion between high-ranking Trump campaign officials.
Pretty funny. I don't know what you call it when the Russians make multiple approaches to members of the Trump family, the Trump organization, the Trump campaign.
It is, I think, of a size and scope probably beyond Watergate.
As for Mueller's central assignment, the letter says the special counsel did not find that the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with the Russians to interfere in the election.
It's a witch hunt. That's all it is. There was no collusion with Russia.
Barr's letter says there's enough evidence to prove that.
That there's not enough
evidence to prove that.
I knew what you meant.
Obviously, some opinion columnists and point of view news outlets have invested in an anti-Trump narrative.
He believes if he says it enough times, people will believe it. And that has been, I think, the trend. He says it over and over and over again, and then people believe it.
As I've said many times before, I've always said there was no collusion. There is absolutely no collusion. That has been proven.
Criminal conspiracy involving the Russian and Russia.
And Trump is wrong. Surprising.
If Vladimir Putin, for some reason, hypothetically, was in a position to be able to give orders,
No!
the presidency is effectively a Russian op, right? If the American presidency right now is the product of collusion between the Russian intelligence services and...
Yeah, you're not gonna, I mean, obviously, this is performance art.
This is annoying. I don't know why you people are watching.
Mueller found no collusion between President Trump or his campaign in Russia.
Who typed a question mark on the teleprompter?
I'm on Burgundy.
This is garbage season.
The Clinton campaign actually did contribute to Russia.
To make it really clear that he did not collude with Russia. Really? He wants to make it really, really clear. Watch.
That was a Democrat hoax.
Is when folks mix up the talk with the news. And sometimes we do let it get too blurry.
I want to turn now to questions about collusion.
There is absolutely no collusion.
Now, did many commentators and Democratic politicians allege collusion? Yes.
There was no collusion with Russia.
I know people like to mock cable news in moments like this. It's an easy punchline, right?
Be honest. Did you think you were going to come on?
You know, that's just a few of the things. I mean, a lot better close. Just found a quick short, one of those compilations. Pulled that one to show this here. But basically, through 2 years of over this, just constantly stating how this was Russian collusion, all this evidence that they have mounting, all this stuff, and it turns out that most of this can't be true, because if this stuff was true, then I think it would clearly show that there was a collusion, attempt to collusion with the Russian government between the Trump administration, but that's not what was found by the Mueller report. So instead of actually going back and actually saying this was bad reporting, bad journalism, stuff from our job on the media, no, that's not what they do. Of course not. They're going to go straight in here to defending themselves, straight into pushing this stuff. We'll go straight here. Rachel Maddow, I mean, almost immediately, right away, she released these 15 questions, which about the Barr report, the letter that Attorney General William Barr sent to Congress. The Mueller report was submitted to him. So, I mean, I don't think it's wrong necessarily to question the report itself, but I think there's a few questions that need to be asked. But the whole thing right now is already talking about basically setting up the cover of like why Barr needs to testify his report to Congress, because it's basically not what she wanted. Like all this, why is Barr deciding on obstruction? Whatever, that's literally what his job is to do. I mean, did Mueller expect Barr to decide on obstruction? That's literally exactly, I'm pretty sure, what it said. If he doesn't decide, then it is his job. So why did he not decide? If he's not deciding, which is question 1, how does question 2 make sense? Who is going to decide? If it's not Mueller and it's not Barr, then I guess no one's deciding. But she immediately starts pushing this myth. But she was one of the absolute worst in covering the entire Russian thing. And now will the Mueller report be released? And I guess she doesn't know how to read the full letter, because it clearly stated that they're working on releasing it, and it's been said it'll be out by mid-April. So I think we can all calm down. We'll have this in about a week, and that'll be totally fine. But of course not. She keeps going further on right here, another headline. Looks like a cover-up to me. Rachel Maddow shows breaking down why something just doesn't add up with AG Barr's actions, which I'm not really sure how. He sent the letter to Congress, which was what his responsibility was to do, and now they're working on releasing it, the full report to Congress and to the public as much as legally possible, and they might even be releasing the entire thing in the entirety to Congress. So I'm not really sure where she's getting all this stuff from about what's not adding up. He's doing his job, but of course, because the report didn't fulfill what the mainstream media has been stating for 2 years, that Russia was involved in the election, which most likely was true, but in terms of that the Trump administration didn't collude with the Russian government in the 2016 election. So that's not true. So they have made, she's pretty upset about this. I mean, I think she was the one where I think there was a clip where as she's talking about this, tearing up, because this was the thing. They completely made Mueller this savior that was going to end the Trump administration. And all the stuff they've been saying for 2 years, all of these allegations, all this stuff really lacked the supporting evidence the entire time, but that really just didn't matter. They didn't care. They kept pushing it. They kept pushing it. They kept pushing it. And now they got to go ahead and defend themselves. And instead of saying, we made mistakes, we did this was bad, this was wrong, now let's wait and see what the full Mueller report says, and we can get into it. But you already know what's going to happen here, is that they've been setting up this cover-up thing right away. They're not even going to look at what they did wrong, because, they did nothing wrong, and that's pretty much the go-to for the mainstream media, is that they're never wrong. It's just people pouncing, Republicans pounce. That's the common excuse from the media. So instead of going ahead and looking at what they did wrong, they go straight into creating this cover-up myth now. So we go from one huge myth to another one just like that, and now this is going to be going on for now until we get the report. And then all there's going to be is this one tiny thing that someone could see as maybe this is collusion or maybe this is obstruction. They're going to bring on their legal analyst or whatever. They're going to say, oh, wow, that looks like obstruction of justice to me, and then they're going to run with it and run with the cover-up myth, which is, anyone could see this coming from a mile away. Anyone could see this coming right from whenever the letter was released, whenever the letter was made public. Anyone could see this coming from a mile away, and it really wasn't hard at all. But then you go ahead, and they're going to do it anyway because they just don't care. So we're going to get into stuff whenever the media, they tried so hard to defend themselves because it was really just terrible reporting for the media the entire time. For 2 years, they continued to push all this stuff. That wasn't true, all these bombshell allegations. That was every day, Russia, and it's just nothing. And they really have nothing left to fall back on. And I think absolutely one of the worst, and this guy does this all the time, Brian Stelter, always defending himself, defending the virtues of the mainstream media, how important he is in particular, but also how important just the mainstream media is. This guy does it all the time. It's really annoying because the guy's an awful journalist. Gets stories wrong repeatedly and never really admits it. He just goes straight into defending himself, just like that. It's insane, and always just talk about how virtuous he is, how virtuous the media is, and never actually takes into account mistakes he's made. He never apologizes because, of course, he's not going to. Even with Jesse Smollett thing, he said, very careful reporting from him and other people in the mainstream media. So pretty just ridiculous stuff. Go ahead, play a quick clip here from him. It's pretty much been circulating around the internet quite frequently, but it's a pretty good one. It pretty much just sums up how the media feels about themselves. They really, I used to sit back and think that they know they're pushing an agenda, right? They don't truly believe some of the stuff they say, but I think all these people truly believe that they're doing a great job, that they're really good at their job. They honestly believe that everything they report is true. They honestly believe that they're the conveyors of the truth to the American people, and I think he's just a prime example of it, and it's pretty funny just to watch as whenever their whole world comes crashing down that they built up for 2 years of a Russian collusion myth. And we'll go ahead and wait whenever the report comes out. Was actually in there, but I'm almost certain it's going to be not very much. But let's go ahead and see Brian Stelter right after the report go ahead and defend himself and the rest of the media, because he's the voice of the mainstream media. He's, the all-knowing, the all good, the virtuous member of the media that's going to come out and defend everyone else on behalf because, he's the face. So let's go ahead and listen to that.
Well, I'm an avid viewer of it because news headlines are ubiquitous these days. Our phones alert us to the news. So cable is more like a rolling talk show, letting people be a part of the daily debate about how our country should be governed and how our world should work. I think that's a good thing. Some of the talk shows are really smart. But the bad thing is when folks mix up the talk with the news. And sometimes we do let it get too blurry. So let me take this on. Partisans on the right are already claiming the end of the Mueller probe vindicates all their prior positions. And they are saying the media, the evil media, was wrong all along.
So, of course, he hops on literally right away. Then whenever the report destroys everything that this guy's been pushing, the rest of the media pushing, it automatically hops on to the right. It's pouncing. Republicans are pouncing all over the media without even taking any sort of blame or any sort of responsibility whatsoever between what he did. But, of course, that's what they always do all the time. This is what the media consistently has been doing. I mean, because they've been getting a lot wrong recently. It's been a rough time recently for people on the left and the media in general. A lot of things not going their way. So they immediately hop onto this stuff and it's never their fault. It's always Republicans pouncing on our mistakes, or not even mistakes, just pouncing on stuff, which is totally just not really accurate, but let's let them continue.
Donald Trump Jr. is tweeting out messages like this: collusion truthers, he says, accusing the press of pushing a narrative against his dad. But Jr. is making a rookie mistake. Mueller's assignment was to get to the truth about Russian interference. Now, did many commentators and Democratic politicians allege collusion? Yes.
You think?
Did many journalists ask about it? Yes. But there is a giant difference between asking and telling. The job of the nation's news media is to ask, to question all sides, to scrutinize all sides, to report on opposing points of view, and to only take the side of truth and decency.
Now, I'm not sure this is just me, but I'm pretty sure every day talking about how this is clear evidence of Russian collusion. This is clearly, we have tons of evidence, every day bringing on these people to say this stuff and every day pushing this stuff. That's not asking simple questions of maybe this happened or maybe that happened. That's pretty much telling everyone around in the United States, this is what happened, and Russian collusion is a real thing, not some made-up myth that we created over here to, try to take down Trump. So that's basically what he's saying, is that they did a great job. They asked the right questions, which I don't really remember when they actually asked questions. They pretty much just pushed stupid myths with not a lot of evidence whatsoever. But, I mean, once again, great job from the media, great job from Brian Stelter. Let him continue about how valuable he is.
Someone should tell Jesse Waters that.
I feel like this delivers a knockout blow to the press and the Democrats who've been saying collusion, collusion, collusion for the last 2 years.
Waters should take his blinders off. Obviously, some opinion columnists and point-of-view news outlets have invested in an anti-Trump narrative.
But he hasn't, this is what this guy always does. He literally actually believes in himself as the exact center. Like, he is the conveyor of the truth. But I don't understand how this guy does it, but he seriously believes this stuff. And he goes out on his show every day and pushes far-left myths, anti-Trump myths, all the time. This guy does it. And yet he could seriously sit there and truly believe that he is the virtuous media. He is the center media, which I don't understand what was wrong with Waters. What he said was exactly correct. This is what they push. This is terrible on the media, but they sweep it right under the rug. They don't even address it. They just move on to the next myth. They move on to the next lies right away. And I don't understand how this guy actually could sit there and believe some of this stuff, that he doesn't have an agenda, that he is right in the center in the conveyor of the truth, and it's really absolutely absurd.
But if I had to pick speculation or solid reporting, I would pick solid reporting in a second. I bet you would too. Reporting is what adds the most value. Finding out something new, putting out new information into the world is the best feeling in journalism. It's the greatest value add.
So I'm not sure how he would know that, because he never really adds any new correct information into the world, but we'll go ahead and let him keep believing this stuff, that he actually has a lot of value and adds so much to America and to the political discourse, because, I mean, it makes him feel good about himself.
That's what hundreds of journalists have been doing, trying to solve pieces of this Trump-Russia puzzle. But here's the thing, speculation actually has value too. It helps open our eyes, helps open our minds to what's
speculating
possible.
That the President of the United States is a Russian puppet, that has a lot of value add. There's a ton of value that's added between this, because we can open our eyes and really think that Vladimir Putin is essentially running America. I mean, that's kind of basically what you guys push for 2 years, and that's a lot of value, that's just basically fear-mongering. And you could just see this stuff and built up in people on the left, their mind, that this was really actually a true thing, that Russia was literally controlling America and that this was going to take down Trump. and it's just insane, but I guess speculation has a lot of value because facts don't really matter. All that matters is speculating. Maybe this could happen. I mean, I guess anything's possible. So I guess every time you just throw out any crazy conspiracy theory, then it has a lot of value add.
I know people like to mock cable news in moments like this. It's an easy punchline, right? We are kind of standing by to find out what the news is going to be, waiting for AG Barr to tell us something. But that does have value too. It gives you a place to go, a place to turn to, a recognition that you're not the only one who wants to know.
And he has said absolutely nothing, because there was nothing that was wrong, or nothing that the Trump administration did that is a crime. So you could keep waiting, and you guys can wait for the report to come out and go ahead and push it. But that's pretty much it. This guy does this all the time. It's absolutely insane. But that's pretty much it with this media collusion stuff. I mean, they keep pushing it. We're a couple, maybe even days away from the full release of the Mueller report. Go ahead, be covering that too. But it's just absolutely insane. So we're going to switch gears here a little bit. Go ahead and move on to the crisis at the border. All right, so when it comes to the border here, there's a real crisis going on at the border, and it's pretty evident, but people on the far left, and even there's the left in general, I mean, people like a center left will kind of admit there's an immigration issue, but they're just going to keep going along with the far left, especially whenever you look into Congress, stuff like that. But when people on the far left literally just keep saying fake crisis, made up stuff, there's no crisis at all. The border's an awesome, safe place, and everyone coming across is all really good people, which of course there's good people who are coming here to make lives better for themselves and their family, but they're still doing it illegally, so it still doesn't change anything. Why can't they get in line and wait? Whenever you cut the line, so people cut in line, they take away from the people that have been waiting for years to get into this country, which is just unfair, premise, obviously, whenever you look at that. I mean, if you've been waiting 6 years to get into the country, you've done everything right, done everything legally, applied all the right ways, and now it's your turn, and then people just keep coming, so we have to slow down the process, and that's what's really wrong with our immigration system. There's a lot wrong with it, but go ahead, and instead of saying, this is a fake thing, or just we're going to push emotional stories, I mean, that stuff has value too, and is, I think, necessary in terms of this conversation, but I think what we really should be focused on is people on the right here and trying to show that there's a real crisis, a real issue on the border, and that Democrats are really not doing their job when it comes to this. Go ahead, just look at the Homeland Security, and of course it's a part of the Trump administration, which is, there was some stuff going down the day with that. We're not going to talk about that, though, here in the show. Just go ahead and see that they say humanitarian and security crisis at southern border reaches a breaking point. We'll go ahead and read the full thing here right at the top. So, illegal immigration hits 12-year high. More than 76,000 migrants crossed in February. The U.S. Border Patrol is currently encountering illegal immigration at the highest rate since 2007, according to new data. In fact, in February, more than double the level of migrants crossed the border without authorization compared to the same period last year, approaching the largest numbers seen in any February in the last 12 years, the New York Times reported. The truth is that the politics and policies of open borders have failed the American people. Our broken system endures, and the ongoing humanitarian crisis at the southern border leaves many minors and families at extreme risk of being exploited of trafficking, human smugglers, gangs, and other nefarious actors seeking to profit at their expense. Secretary of Homeland Security Christine M. Nelson, who actually ended up resigning today, but this is still obviously very relevant. Activist courts, congressional inaction, and criminals intent on breaking our laws stand in the way of confronting illegal and uncontrolled migration, threatening our safety and security. What was a crisis is now a full-fledged emergency. This cannot be a partisan issue, Nelson continued. Every DHS secretary since the department's inception has sounded the alarm about our unsecured border and its consequences. The American people and our law enforcement personnel rightfully demand effective border security, building the wall, strengthening our laws, and giving the men and women serving on the front lines the tools and resources they need to keep the Americans safe. To that end, the department pledges our unwavering resolve to confronting the president and ever-evolving future threats to our national security at our southern border. Which, I mean, this just, I don't understand what's wrong with this. I mean, this is clearly right here. It's clearly a crisis at the border. People are crossing at enormous highs. I mean, we go on to even further stuff in a little bit, but just based off of this is 12-year highs right now that has been reached. Including stating that nothing needs to be done. The border's a great place. Everything's safe. Everything's working fine. We don't need any fundings whatsoever. It's just totally disingenuous what actually is going on. But, of course, when you want open borders, like people on the far left are wanting, what's kind of becoming the mainstream, or not necessarily mainstream, but what's the loudest, what's getting out there, what the media is pushing, what people like AOC push. We're going to talk about her later on the show as well. But people are getting exploited this, and it's really going to the core of what's wrong here with the immigration system is we have broken laws. They can't even implement the proper policies because of laws that have been set into place. What we need is to change these laws, but people in Congress, the Democrats, don't even want to change the laws. They don't want to make it so that the correct policies can be implemented. They don't care about that type of stuff. That's not what's important to them. They really could care less about the proper policies to actually help with the border. They don't care about funding the border. We need more agents. Go ahead right here. Earlier here in another report. Worst crisis in Border Patrol history, says Border Patrol Union president. They're understaffed. They're over capacity in these facilities. They can't house these people, so they got to release these people straight into the American thing. This is just not working. They need more funding. They need more resources. They need more agents. They need all this stuff. The Democrats won't step up to the plate because it's totally fine, totally manufactured crisis, regardless of what all the people who's legit, this is their jobs, Department of Homeland Security, people on the border, legit, the border agents saying they need more resources, the heads of Border Patrol, heads of ICE saying we need more resources, we need this, we need agents, we need more beds, we need more resources in general, we need better laws because we can't do our job. And instead of trying to fix what's an extremely broken immigration system, they just keep saying fake crisis. Even Obama's immigration chief speak out on the crisis at the southern border. So the people that led during the Obama administration, all the stuff at the border, coming out and saying that there's a real crisis here. This is not working. So we got to come out here. We got to change these laws. We need to add funding to the border to secure the border. We need to go ahead and add more agents. We need to fix the immigration system. So if you secure the border, stop illegal immigrants, then we can go ahead and fix the laws to essentially that can help keep immigrants out, illegal immigrants out. Fix the laws there to we can actually apply the proper policies that will actually work. Go ahead and secure the border. A wall does work. It's pretty, I think, documented through the facts. We're not going to get into that. But of course, it's not going to hurt to have a wall. That doesn't make sense. So, and I don't understand the immoral arguments between keeping out illegal immigrants, bad people out of our country, and letting the good people come in the proper way. Because if you go ahead and secure the border, go ahead, make sure you know who's coming in and out of your country. Majority, obviously, there'll still be some illegal crossings. You can't get it down to zero. But if you could, for a majority, keep it under control, then you can go ahead and fix what's a broken immigration system, which takes a long time. We can keep that line moving legally, getting people that are going to be a benefit to the United States of America coming through. But of course, that's not what the left really cares about. They don't really want, for people to be coming in because they want to keep pushing the myth that Republicans are essentially caging children and separating families, which there's some truth to some of this stuff, but of course they blow it out of proportion. They make it sound like Trump is enforcing these hateful policies or whatever, and then they try to sit there and state that the border is a 100% safe place, which is obviously not true. We can see this countless times again, over and over, how it's not. All these reports at the border recently. And I think it's just right whenever Trump declared the national emergency, all this stuff heightened up here. We got people every day trying to cross illegally every day, and they're not staffed properly because Congress will refuse to fund it. So instead of Republicans here, and this is on the Trump kind of backed off of this, but he was pushing the potential here of shutting down the U.S.-Mexico border, which I'm pretty skeptical about in terms of I think it has a lot of economic harm that could occur to the country. But of course, if we actually had a process here where we were going to shut down the border so we could secure the border and then fix the immigration laws, fix the entire system, I think I could be for that if that's what's going to happen. But just shutting down the border, I think is just going to give Democrats more fire in terms of saying that this is just like you're making this fake crisis or whatever, which is not true, or that they don't really care about the American people because you're hurting the economy, which is something which Republicans are really going to need. Republicans and Trump are really going to need to be strong going into the 2020 election, which is obviously, I think, one of the most important elections here. There's a big divide here of what's going to happen, almost like culturally and obviously politically here in the United States. A very important election, and I think necessarily hurting the economy is definitely not the way to go for Republicans. So he's backed off of that claim, but I think the best thing to do here is just keep using facts, keep putting Democrats' feet on the fire and saying there's a real crisis here, which this is a winning issue because the facts here are so largely in favor of people on the right here, so largely in favor of the GOP, you just keep putting Democrats on fire, saying you're not funding this, you're not fixing the laws, you're not fixing the system, this stuff's going to keep occurring, and we don't have the right laws in place. This is the only policies that we can do. This isn't working. And it's still, they take this effect. We keep showing these examples, keep showing these statistics. I think stay away a little bit from the people coming across in murders. I think it have a little bit of a part, but I just stay focused to these straight statistics. What are people that work for Border Patrol saying? What are the heads of these departments saying? What they need, and just to keep ignoring them, it's not going to work. This is a winning issue for the right, and we need to keep pushing this hard instead of trying to shut down the border, which is only something I think if Democrats finally decided, okay, let's start working on this, and maybe we could shut it down temporarily to sort of like, improve the system. But just go ahead and keep putting them to fire because their system's not working right now because there is a real crisis at the border. It's not fake, but they can go ahead and keep saying it is. So now we're going to go ahead and get into AOC because she's pretty much, the center of Dumb's things daily. I mean, another outrageous comment. That's kind of a good acronym for AOC because that's pretty much just how she goes. Every day she's got something stupid to say. So you can almost have a show about something she says every single day. But we'll go ahead and get into something. It's going to start out with the border, something that I'm sure most people are familiar with. But we'll go ahead and start there, and we'll move into some other stuff, and then we'll wrap up the show. All right, so a few days ago, Lawrence Jones III going live on Fox News from the border was wearing a vest, and of course AOC has to come out and goes, does live from the border mean Party City? ? Fox is really out here doing the most on a budget to make the border look more dangerous than it is. Laughing face emoji. The guy's literally wearing a bulletproof vest, but of course it doesn't look real to her, but I'm sure, how would she know? She's never touched a gun. She's never looked at any of this stuff. But whatever. The border's not a dangerous place. It's really safe all the time there. And then he responds here with, Border Patrol made me wear it. Now who's the fool? And then, she just doesn't say smart stuff, and she thinks she's so smart, and she thinks that she's, a genius. And of course the people on the media and the left keep pushing her as that, and then they just claim that people here on the right, like us that talk about her, are actually obsessed with her, which really makes absolutely no sense, because whenever you keep pushing her as some thought child and some genius and the new face and the new movement, of course we're going to talk about her whenever you talk about her every day, and we're going to respond to the dumb stuff that she says on a regular basis. And here's just another example of this, saying that the border is a safe place. And I mean, the guy's wearing this because a few days ago, right across that bridge there, is controlled by a cartel, where there was only a shooting like feet away from where he's standing a week ago. So Border Patrol makes him wear the vest for safety reasons, but of course that's Fox News out there on a budget to make the border look more dangerous than it is. So we're going to do a thing here that she tweeted a few days ago. This is a pretty big thing last week, pretty big thing in the news for like about a day. But of course, here she is. Croissants at LaGuardia are going for $7 a piece, and then shock face emoji. I don't know why she uses these emojis, because they're really stupid and they don't help make her points. But yet some people think getting a whole hour of personal dedicated human labor for $15 is too expensive, and then double question mark to make it more, this is a bigger question, because it's just crazy and absurd that people think $15 is too expensive. So before we get into how this entire thing is obviously like dumb and also not true actually at all, but let's just read it and let's just see, like, just looking at it, like, croissants going for $7 a piece. I mean, I'm not sure how that's super shocking whenever you think, well, that's more logistic, but just like, okay, if it's $7 a piece and too expensive, don't buy it. No one's forcing you to buy it, which I guess she doesn't understand the concepts of free markets, and we see her demonstrate that regularly, just also to understand any basic economic principles, which someone as I've never taken an economics class. I do plan on majoring in economics as well as political science when I go to college, but I can understand a lot more basic economic principles and theories than she can. And she's apparently majored in from Boston University, which is a pretty decent college, but she clearly demonstrates all the time the lack of any knowledge in absolutely anything. But then yet people think an hour of personal dedicated human labor for $15 is too expensive. And yes, making croissants for $15, it's a croissant. Like, what do you mean? They make a croissant and then they put it on the shelf and people buy it. It's not a hard job, and I think that she's not really understanding that. She never seemed to understand that. But now let's go and get into this, how this entire thing is not true. People actually called this the pastry shop that she's referring to, and they're actually going for $3.29 a piece. That's what the Washington Free Beacon confirmed that they're calling them. They also realized that the minimum wage is $15 per hour. I think it's $15 per hour for several staff, which is actually above the minimum wage in New York City. So they're already paying above minimum wage, 15. That's your living wage. But for most job in the new terminal, where this actual place is located, is $19 an hour, which is a lot more above than their $15. So they're already paying what you think a whole hour dedicated human labor is, which is just absurd. For they're making croissants, so I'm not really understanding why they need $19 an hour for. But of course, let's just also not dedicate this. So it's only $3.29, which is obviously I don't think absurd at all. And let's just say, let's see how free markets work. Because you set the price because they have a monopoly in there because LaGuardia controls what companies can come in and sell. So they're probably the only croissant place in LaGuardia Airport, so they set the prices there. So if you want a croissant, you have to pay it. Guess what? If you don't have to. No one forces you to. So now if no one buys it, then the prices go down. Now, whenever you have a higher minimum wage, whenever they have to pay their workers more, they need to make more money, so they raise their prices. And that's pretty, basic stuff to understand, but she always denies that that's what's going to happen. Whenever you raise minimum wage, stuff goes higher, which in New York City, they have a higher minimum wage. Everything there costs more. Now, let's go ahead and say that someone opened a croissant shop right across from the airport, and they could set it lower, and you can go buy that for cheaper. That's what a free market is. That's how competition happens. And then whenever the place across the store across the street starts taking business, then the place inside the airport will have to lower their prices, and that's what competition is. And she's clearly never has understood this concept. But I don't know what else to expect from her. Another really dumb tweet, and she was absolutely blown up by this. And then she obviously goes out there, and then she had the response. I don't have a screenshot of that pulled up, but it's like people on the right always have to weaponize what I say. Well, it's when you say dumb stuff, she's like, people weaponize what I say and they're making my point for me. I don't know how we made your point because we just destroyed what you said is really stupid and really dumb and having no factual content. But apparently we made your point, and of course we're gonna attack. We're not pouncing. We're just showing that what you say is wrong, and we don't want people getting the wrong impression, and how what you're saying doesn't actually make sense. It isn't a reflection of reality. So then we'll go ahead and get into the last thing here, and this is pretty bad. This came out recently. It's actually the Lawrence Jones guys actually responded to her whenever she was talking to Border Patrol about him wearing the vest of Border Patrol. Responded with this video clip that's kind of been making the rounds here. It's pretty bad. I'll go and play another clip from the DC Shorts here on this, where she basically fakes a black accent, and then we'll go ahead and get into a response. We'll just go ahead and play the clip here real quick, and then we'll go ahead and talk about it, and then talk about some of the responses from it.
This is what organizing looks like. Right. This is what building power looks like. This is what changing the country looks like. It's when we choose to show up and occupy the room and talk about the things that matter most, talking about our future. Reverend, you bring up a funny anecdote, and I'm proud to be a bartender. Ain't nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with working retail, folding clothes for other people to buy. There is nothing wrong with preparing the food that your neighbors will eat. There is nothing wrong with driving the buses that take your family to work. There is nothing wrong with being a working person in the United States of America, and there is everything dignified about it.
Now, I think that's obviously her faking that accent, because I don't know if this is just me, but I've never heard her use that accent at all in any time I've ever heard her speak, or anything anywhere near that accent, which is it was a horrible impersonation. Super obvious. We've seen Hillary Clinton try to, the southern twang to her accent, southern drawl a little bit to her accent, which is a little bit more hidden. It's pretty obvious, but this is this horrible, it was L-Y-K-E is what it was like. It was really bad. She's never spoken like this before, and she normally sounds dumb when she speaks, but this is extreme racism. This is racist whenever you go ahead and try to change your voice to appeal, because she's talking to a large black audience here, so she's trying to appeal to them, and very obviously what she's doing. A lot of people obviously jumping all over this, calling her racist, very true, and then she goes ahead and responds going, I grew up in the Bronx, which is not true. I'm not sure how many times we have to talk about that because she keeps bringing it up, but it's not that she moved at a very young age to a pretty rich suburb in New Jersey. So she didn't grow up in the Bronx. Plus, that's not a Bronx accent. They don't talk like that in the Bronx. It was very clearly a Southern-oriented accent. I don't think they talk like that in the South either because that was a horrible accent. But that was very clearly trying to imitate like a Southern accent, not one from the Bronx. And I don't think you fooled anyone. That was really horrible job from AOC once again. So that's like 3 days in a row she's had. I mean, I guess that was the same thing as Border Tree, but this is like several days in a row she's had some rough days. But what's new? She has rough days all the time, and I'm sure we can go on her Twitter right now and find something within the last 38 hours, last 48 hours, the last 2 days. She had something stupid probably, because I mean she consistently does. But that's pretty much gonna wrap things up here for the and I'll be back.